I was sitting in the third row of Madison High's auditorium, my hands clasped so tightly in my lap that my knuckles had turned white. Emma, my baby girl, was walking across that stage in her cap and gown, diploma in hand, and I should have been crying tears of joy. This moment, this single beautiful moment, was supposed to be the culmination of everything we had worked for as a family. The applause was thundering around us. Parents were standing, cheering, and taking pictures. Emma had that radiant smile on her face, the one that had melted my heart since she was 2 years old. She was scanning the crowd, looking for us, and when her eyes found mine, she waved. My heart swelled with pride so fierce it almost hurt. And that's when my husband of 22 years leaned over and whispered in my ear, like he was commenting on the weather. "I'm leaving you, Agnes. I've already moved my stuff out. I wanted to tell you after Emma's ceremony, so I wouldn't ruin her day." The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually felt my body recoil, like someone had just punched me in the stomach. The applause around us turned into white noise, a distant roar that sounded like it was coming from underwater. All I could hear was the sound of my world cracking in half, piece by piece, while hundreds of people celebrated around us. I turned to look at Kendrick, this man I had shared a bed with for over 2 decades. This man whose morning coffee I had made almost every single day for 22 years, and his face was completely calm. Matter of fact. Like he had just told me we were out of milk, or that it might rain later. Emma was still waving at us from the stage. She was still smiling. She had no idea that in the span of 15 seconds her family had just imploded. My mind was racing, but somehow I managed to keep that smile plastered on my face. I waved back at Emma, because that's what mothers do. We protect our children's moments, even when our own world is falling apart. Even when the man sitting next to us has just casually destroyed 22 years of marriage during our daughter's graduation ceremony. Before I tell you what happened next, and trust me, what happened next will shock you, I need to ask you something. Have you ever had a moment where your entire life changed in a single sentence? Where someone you trusted completely just shattered everything you thought you knew about your reality? Drop a comment below and let me know, because what I'm about to share with you is a story about betrayal, revenge, and how the quiet, predictable wife everyone underestimated turned out to be smarter than anyone ever imagined. And if you want to hear how this story ends, how I dealt with Kendrick in a way that left him screaming in that auditorium, hit that subscribe button right now, because you're not going to want to miss a single detail of what comes next. My name is Agnes Johnson. I am 45 years old, and until 30 seconds before that moment, I thought I knew exactly who I was. I was a high school English teacher at Roosevelt High across town, the kind of teacher who stayed late to help struggling students, who knew every kid's name by the second week of school, who genuinely believed education could change lives. I was the woman who made homemade lasagna every Sunday without fail, using my grandmother's recipe that took 4 hours from start to finish. I was the woman who had never missed a parent-teacher conference, not once in 18 years, even when I had the flu so bad I could barely stand. I was the steady one, the reliable one. The woman who had been the foundation of this marriage, while my husband Kendrick climbed the corporate ladder at his accounting firm, rung by rung, promotion by promotion. I was the woman who had put her dreams of getting her master's degree on hold, not once but twice, so he could focus on his career without worrying about household responsibilities or childcare logistics. I was also, apparently, the woman whose husband had just announced he was leaving her at their daughter's graduation ceremony. But let me tell you who I used to be, because understanding that will help you understand why what happened next was so devastating, and why my response was so calculated. Kendrick and I met during our junior year at Ohio State. I was getting my teaching degree, spending my evenings in the education building, dreaming about inspiring young minds. He was studying business, always with his nose in finance textbooks, talking about market trends and 5-year plans. We were both from small-town Ohio. He was from Mansfield, I was from Lima. And we both believed in the same things. Hard work, family values, building something meaningful together. We got married 3 weeks after graduation. I still remember our wedding. Small ceremony at my parents' church, reception in the community center, my mom's friends making all the food. We felt like we were starting this incredible adventure together. We were 23 years old and convinced we had the whole world figured out. Emma came along 3 years later, and for the first decade of our marriage, we actually were a team, a real team. Kendrick would come home from his entry-level position at Henderson and Associates, this tiny accounting firm downtown, and I'd have dinner, waiting after spending my day teaching 8th graders who thought Shakespeare was ancient torture. We'd sit around our little kitchen table, and he'd tell me about difficult clients, while I told him about the kid who finally understood fractions, or the girl who wrote an amazing essay about her immigrant grandmother. We'd help Emma with her homework together. He was better at math, I handled the reading and writing. We'd take family vacations to Lake Erie every summer, renting the same little cottage for a week, building sand castles, and teaching Emma to fish. Kendrick would grill burgers while I'd read on the porch, and Emma would run between us, sandy and sunburned and completely happy. Those were good years. Real years. I look back on them now and I can still feel how solid everything felt, how certain I was that we were building something that would last forever. But somewhere around year 12, things started shifting. It was subtle at first. So subtle I convinced myself I was imagining it. Kendrick's promotions started coming faster. He went from junior accountant to senior accountant, to team leader to department head, each step bringing more responsibility, more pressure, and definitely more hours. Suddenly, those family dinners became me and Emma eating alone while Kendrick worked late. Those homework sessions became just me, struggling through algebra I barely remembered, while he stayed at the office until 8 or 9 at night. Those Lake Erie vacations became shorter, then sporadic, then eventually just me and Emma going alone because Kendrick was too busy with important clients to take a full week off. I became the default parent, the one who handled everything at home while he provided for the family, a phrase he started using more and more, like it excused missing Emma's school plays or forgetting our anniversary dinner reservations. And here's the thing that really gets me. I enabled it. I told myself this was temporary, that once he established himself, things would go back to normal. I picked up the slack without complaining because I believed in us, in our partnership, in the idea that we were sacrificing now for a better future together. 3 years ago, Kendrick became a partner at his firm. I was so proud of him. 20 years of hard work had finally paid off. I thought this would be when things got easier, when he could finally relax a little and remember that he had a family who loved him. Instead, everything got worse. Suddenly, there were business trips, lots of them. Weekend conferences in Chicago, client dinners in Cleveland, networking events that seemed to happen every other week. He started buying new clothes without consulting me, expensive suits and shoes that cost more than I spent on groceries in a month. He traded in his reliable Honda for a sleek BMW, explaining that image mattered in his position. He started talking about expanding his network, whatever that meant. He'd come home from these events and mention names I'd never heard before, colleagues and clients who apparently were becoming very important in his life. Then came the gym membership. Kendrick, who hadn't exercised regularly since college intramural basketball, suddenly started going to the gym at 5 in the morning. Every morning. He'd come home after work and immediately shower, even though he'd showered at the gym after his morning workout. He got a new phone, some fancy iPhone with all the latest features, and suddenly it was always face down on the table during dinner. When it buzzed with messages, which it did constantly, he'd glance at it with this little smile I hadn't seen in years. When I'd ask about his day, trying to maintain some connection between us, his answers got shorter and more dismissive. Just work stuff, Agnes. You wouldn't understand the complexities of corporate accounting. Like I was too simple, too small town, too limited to comprehend his important business world. I started feeling like a roommate in my own marriage. Like I was just the person who maintained the house and raised the child, while he lived this exciting, important life that didn't include me. But here's what I told myself, and maybe some of you have told yourselves this too. I convinced myself this was normal. Couples go through phases, right? Marriage has seasons. He was just focused on his career, and once things settled down, we'd reconnect. I focused on Emma, on my students, on keeping our family stable while he figured out whatever midlife crisis he was going through. I was patient. I was understanding. I was everything a supportive wife should be. And that patience, that understanding, that determination to hold our family together, no matter what. That's exactly what allowed him to betray me so completely. 6 months ago, I was paying our monthly bills like I always did. Sorting through credit card statements, checking account balances, making sure everything was in order. I'm meticulous about our finances. It comes with being a teacher on a fixed income. Every dollar matters when you're trying to save for your daughter's college tuition. That's when I noticed charges I didn't recognize. Expensive dinners at restaurants we'd never been to. Places like Le Bernardin downtown. The kind of upscale establishments where a single meal costs more than I spend on groceries for a week. Hotel stays during supposed business trips to cities I'd never heard Kendrick mention before, places where I was pretty sure his company didn't even have clients. A $300 charge at some boutique lingerie store. I definitely haven't bought any lingerie lately. When I asked Kendrick about these charges, showing him the statements with genuine confusion, he got defensive in a way I'd never seen before. His face flushed red, and he snatched the papers out of my hands like I'd violated some sacred boundary. I'm working my ass off for this family, Agnes. I don't need you micromanaging every business expense. These are client dinners, business accommodations. It's called networking, and it's how I keep us financially secure. But something felt wrong. Really wrong. His explanation didn't add up, and more importantly, the way he reacted. Angry, almost panicked. That wasn't the Kendrick I knew. The Kendrick I married would have sat down with me and gone through every charge, explained everything patiently. This man acted like I was some suspicious stranger questioning his integrity. So I started paying attention, really paying attention. I noticed he was doing laundry more often, handling his own dry cleaning for the first time in our entire marriage. Kendrick, who used to leave his dirty clothes on the bedroom floor for me to deal with, was suddenly very particular about washing his own shirts and taking his suits to the cleaners himself. He was showering as soon as he got home from work, every single day. Not just a quick rinse, long, thorough showers with the expensive body wash he'd recently started buying. When I asked him about it, he said he felt grimy after being in the office all day, that he wanted to be clean for dinner with his family. It sounded reasonable, but it felt deliberate. And then there were the text messages. Kendrick had always been casual about his phone around me. He'd leave it on the counter while he showered, and ask me to check his messages if it buzzed while he was driving. No big deal. But suddenly, every text message made him smile in a way I hadn't seen in years. This secretive, almost giddy smile that would flash across his face before he quickly composed himself. When I'd ask who was texting, he'd say it was work colleagues sharing funny stories or memes. But when someone texts you about quarterly reports or client presentations, you don't smile like you just received a love letter. I started watching him with those messages, and I noticed he'd type responses quickly, then delete them and type something else. Like he was being very careful about his words. Like he was crafting messages to someone who mattered more than they should. The final straw came 2 weeks before Emma's graduation. I was rushing around that morning because Kendrick had forgotten his lunch again, something that had been happening more frequently. He'd always been absent-minded, but lately it seemed like his head was completely elsewhere. I drove to his office building downtown, the same building where he'd worked for 15 years, and took the elevator up to the 12th floor. I'd been there dozens of times for company Christmas parties, retirement celebrations, the occasional forgotten document or lunch. Janet, his secretary, has known me for over a decade. She's the sweet woman in her 50s who always asks about Emma and remembers my birthday. When I walked up to her desk with Kendrick's lunch bag, she looked genuinely surprised to see me. "Oh, Agnes, I thought you were out of town this week. Kendrick said you were visiting your sister in California." I stood there holding that lunch bag, feeling like the floor had just shifted beneath my feet. I hadn't talked to my sister Lisa in months. We'd had some silly argument about Christmas plans and hadn't made up yet. I certainly wasn't in California. I was standing right there in downtown Cleveland, very obviously not 3,000 miles away. What? Was all I managed to say. Janet looked confused, then concerned. "He said you were visiting family on the West Coast this week. That's why he was working late every night to keep busy while you were gone." That's when I realized there was another life Kendrick was living, one that apparently required me to be conveniently absent. A life where I was safely across the country, out of the way, while he did. What exactly? I left that lunch bag on Janet's desk and walked out of that building feeling like a complete stranger in my own life. I hired a private investigator that afternoon. I know that sounds dramatic, like something out of a movie, but I was desperate for answers. I found Marcus through an online search for investigators in Cleveland. He was this calm, professional man in his 60s who met me at a coffee shop downtown and listened to my story without judgment. Marcus was thorough. Scary thorough. Within a week, he had photos, detailed credit card records, phone logs, and a name: Millicent Chen, a 32-year-old marketing executive from Kendrick's firm. But what Marcus showed me was worse than I'd imagined. This wasn't just an affair. This was a complete alternate life. Kendrick had been telling Millicent that he was separated from me, that we were just staying together for Emma's sake until graduation. He'd created this elaborate story where I was the understanding but distant ex-wife who'd agreed to maintain appearances until our daughter finished high school. He'd been taking her on trips using our joint credit cards, romantic weekends to Chicago, wine tours in Michigan, even a long weekend in New York City that he'd told me was a business conference. Marcus had photos of them together at romantic dinners, holding hands across candlelit tables, sharing dessert like young lovers. The jewelry charges I'd questioned? He'd bought her a diamond bracelet for her birthday, a necklace for their 6-month anniversary. Marcus showed me receipts from Tiffany & Co., purchases that cost more than I spent on Emma's school clothes for an entire year. But the worst part, the part that made me physically sick when Marcus showed me the photos, they'd been looking at apartments together. Expensive downtown lofts, the kind of place where young professionals live when they want to feel sophisticated and important. There were photos of them with a real estate agent, Kendrick pointing out features like built-in wine storage and city views. Millicent clinging to his arm like they were planning their dream home together. Marcus even had a photo of them at a jewelry store, not buying more gifts, but looking at engagement rings. Kendrick was holding Millicent's hand while she tried on different options, both of them smiling like they'd discovered some beautiful secret. 22 years of marriage, and he was planning his next life while lying to my face every single day. Have you ever discovered that someone you trusted completely was living a double life? The feeling is indescribable, like everything you thought was real suddenly becomes a question mark. Leave a comment and tell me about a time someone's betrayal completely blindsided you. Because what I'm about to tell you next, how I used this information to completely destroy Kendrick's perfect little plan, you're not gonna believe. If you're invested in this story and want to see exactly how I made Kendrick pay for his deception, hit that subscribe button right now, because the revenge I'm about to describe is going to leave you speechless. I could have confronted him immediately. I could have burst into his office that very day, thrown those photos on his desk, and demanded answers. I could have screamed, thrown things, called Millicent and told her exactly what kind of man she was dating. God knows I wanted to. The rage was burning in my chest like acid, eating away at everything I thought I knew about my life. Instead, I did what I do best. I planned. You see, Kendrick had made one crucial mistake. He'd underestimated me. For years, he'd dismissed me as boring, predictable Agnes, the quiet teacher wife who made lasagna on Sundays and never caused drama. He thought I was too passive, too trusting, too naive to ever catch on to what he was doing. He was wrong. I spent the next 2 weeks quietly gathering evidence, documenting everything with the methodical precision I use when grading research papers. Every credit card statement, every unexplained absence, every lie he'd told me, I cataloged it all. I made copies of everything Marcus had given me and stored them in multiple locations. I opened my own bank account at a different bank across town and quietly transferred half of our savings. Legally, it was as much mine as his, and I wasn't about to let him clean out our accounts and leave me with nothing when he finally decided to make his exit official. I consulted with a divorce attorney named Patricia Wong, who had been recommended by another teacher whose husband had cheated on her a few years back. Patricia was sharp, thorough, and completely unsympathetic to cheating spouses. She walked me through my options, helped me understand exactly what I was entitled to, and prepared divorce papers that would protect Emma's college fund and secure my financial future. But then I did something Kendrick never expected from boring, predictable Agnes. I reached out to Millicent directly, not to confront her, not to call her names or threaten her. I wanted to have a conversation. I found her work email through the company directory and sent her a simple message asking if we could meet for coffee. I told her I was Kendrick's wife and that I thought we should talk. She agreed to meet, probably thinking I was going to beg her to stay away from my husband or make some desperate plea to save my marriage. When we sat down at that little cafe downtown, I could see why Kendrick was attracted to her. Millicent was beautiful, intelligent, and articulate. She had this confidence that comes from being young and successful and having the world at your feet. She was everything I used to be before 22 years of marriage and motherhood wore me down. But here's what shocked me. She had no idea Kendrick was still living with me, still sleeping in our bed, still playing happy family every single night. She genuinely believed we were separated and just maintaining appearances until Emma graduated. She thought I was the bitter ex-wife who wouldn't let go, who was making the divorce difficult out of spite. When I showed her photos of Kendrick and me at Emma's school play just 2 weeks earlier, photos of him helping me plant flowers in our garden last month, her face went completely white. When I told her about the family dinner we'd had just 3 nights before, where he'd helped Emma with her college applications and kissed me goodnight like he had for 22 years, she started crying. "He told me you were separated," she whispered. "He said you barely spoke to each other, that you were just going through the motions until Emma graduated. He said you knew about us and were okay with it, because you'd both moved on emotionally." That's when I realized that Kendrick wasn't just betraying me. He was lying to everyone. Millicent wasn't some home-wrecking villain, she was another victim of his deception. She'd fallen in love with a man who'd painted himself as a devoted father, stuck in a loveless marriage, waiting for the right time to start fresh. I told her the truth. All of it. About the man who still told me he loved me every morning, who still made plans for our future retirement, who still acted like the devoted husband and father while planning his escape with her. By the end of our conversation, Millicent was as angry as I was. She'd been manipulated just as badly as I had. Just differently. We weren't enemies. We were allies who'd both been played by the same man. So when graduation day arrived, and Kendrick leaned over and whispered those words to me in that auditorium, I was ready. I smiled, patted his hand like a loving wife, and whispered back, "That's interesting, Kendrick, because Millicent is here tonight." I watched his face drain from every drop of color as I pointed to the back of the auditorium, where Millicent was standing with a confused expression, holding an envelope. She looked beautiful in her black dress, but her face was stone cold. I invited her, I continued in that same sweet whisper. I thought she should see what kind of man she's planning to marry, the kind who lies to everyone, including her. The kind who tells his girlfriend he's separated while telling his wife he loves her every morning. Kendrick's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Agnes, what did you... Oh, and Kendrick, I've already dealt with you. The divorce papers are on your desk at home, along with all the evidence of your secret life. Every photo, every receipt, every text message Marcus was able to recover. Millicent has copies too. I watched him turn to look at Millicent, desperation creeping into his eyes, but she just stared back at him with disgust. She's decided she doesn't want to be part of this mess anymore, I added. Turns out, when you tell someone the whole truth about a person's character, they make better decisions about their future. As Emma walked off the stage with her diploma, beaming with pride and accomplishment, Kendrick started losing it. Right there in that auditorium full of families celebrating their children's achievements, he started raising his voice, telling me I'd ruined everything, that I was vindictive and crazy, that I'd destroyed his life out of spite. Parents around us started turning to stare. Emma looked confused from the stage, trying to figure out why her father was making a scene during her graduation ceremony. He screamed so loud when the realization of what I had done hit him. But all I felt was freedom. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt completely, utterly free. 6 months later, I'm sitting in my new apartment, a bright, cheerful place, with big windows and room for Emma's college friends to visit. Emma chose to live with me after learning the truth about her father's double life. She's working on her college applications at the kitchen table while I grade papers, and we're both happier than we've been in years. Kendrick's firm partnership dissolved when his affair became public knowledge. Turns out, having a scandal involving 2 employees and a messy public divorce isn't great for a company's reputation, especially when clients started questioning his trustworthiness with their financial matters. Millicent transferred to another company and actually sent me a thank you note for helping her dodge what she called the biggest bullet of my life. She's dating someone new now, someone who was honest with her from day one. I'm finally enrolled in my master's program, something I should have done years ago. Emma told me just last week that she's proud of how I handled everything. With dignity, with strategy, and with more strength than anyone thought quiet Agnes Johnson had. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting angry. Sometimes it's just getting smart. And sometimes when someone underestimates you for years, the sweetest victory is proving them wrong when it matters most. If this story taught you anything about not underestimating the quiet ones, or if you've ever had to be stronger than people thought you could be, make sure you subscribe to hear more stories about people who turned their biggest betrayals into their greatest victories. Because sometimes, the best chapters of our lives begin when we stop letting other people write our story. If you enjoyed this story, like, subscribe and share with others so they can learn too. See you in our next video.